Okay, so we're going to talk about marine shorelines now. And so we want to try another poll really quick. And we just want to ask you guys what you care most about your shoreline. And so we're going to try to share another poll, see if that works. So you should see a poll on your screen now. We're just asking what you value most about your shoreline. Is it the view? Is it peace, quiet, fresh air? Is it beach access or water sport access, wildlife habitat, the moderate weather or climate there, or something else? So please feel free to take a moment to vote if you like. Great. Looks like we have answers kind of all over the place. A lot of people.
Somebody says.
Oh, nice. Yep. Right. I know it's hard to choose, right? Yeah. So folks care about a lot of things, of course, and it looks like wildlife and habitat is the #1 answer here. It's good to hear because that will be a component, but not the only component of things that we'll talk about today. So thank you for that engagement. So I'm just going to try to play this quick animation here. So Puget Sound, as you may know, in the last ice age, 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, was covered by a mile-high glacier. And the consequences of this glacier, the meltwaters of this glacier, as temperatures warmed, carved a lot of the geographic features we know today, the peninsulas, the fjord-like passages, the inlets, and things we see today as the floodwaters rise and carve out some of these areas. And also this glaciation has also impacted the type of soil we have and created this kind of compacted this layer of glacial kind of consolidated till, we call it, in a lot of areas. And that has consequences for how we think about and manage our erosion and drainage today, which we'll get into later. But the big idea here is our shoreline's been changing in big ways for a long time, regardless of our current climate and sea level rise trajectories. Your shoreline's a dynamic place, as you know. Defining exactly where the shoreline is can be difficult sometimes because our tides are changing and our sea levels are rising, and we have plants growing, we have bluffs eroding, we have driftwood piling on the beach, we have trees growing in and trees falling down, and all sorts of things. It's an interesting, dynamic, beautiful, complex place. It's probably the reason why a lot of you enjoy living on the shoreline, but it isn't one thing, and it changes over time. And one way to look at a unit of beach is to look at the drift cell, as we call it. And so it's just that, looking at that, that's just an area that is moving material from one area to another. So in this case, you have material eroding and then moving along the shoreline and depositing in another area of beach. So we have beaches that are, changing and growing and moving sand around. And so just another way to look at that, is this little animation here. So we see the wind pushing waves to shore. We have a lot of open water long distance that creates a lot of energy, and those waves are pushing and bouncing along and moving sediment along, and that can grow features like this little spit here over time. And then we can also have other features like erosion that is slowly eroding the bluff, and often in events like this, and that adds nutrients to the beach and supplies more sand, which is then moved to create more features and more dynamic habitat. So we have shifting sands here. This is an example of a real life location where this has happened. You can see this is looking at Google Earth imagery, 1999 through 2017. You can see the sediment is moving kind of northward essentially, and further protecting the properties that live within that spit. Shorelines are complicated and they vary a lot. We have all sorts of shore forms. We have salt marshes and river deltas and mud flats and sand spits and bays and bluffs and beaches and lagoons and our subtidal kelp and eelgrass beds. There's a lot going on, and it's a really diverse place, and your shoreline is unique. Just to take a quick look at kind of what's happening on your shoreline, you might see a stretch of beach and think it all kind of looks the same, but this is showing in one stretch of coastline here, we have kind of a lot going on. So we have a feeder bluff. That means that area is eroding sediment. We have accretion area. That area is mostly capturing sediment, and we have a transport zone where that sediment's mostly just moving along. So there's a bunch of arrows here, but the big arrows just shows the main thing that's happening, and we'll zoom in on that. So Peter Bluff, we have stuff falling onto the beach. In a dramatic example, here's a tree that's fallen onto the beach, but there's also sediment and sand that's eroding onto the beach, and then some of that sand and sediment's carried along. In the accretion area, we have stuff eroding. You can see the stuff accreting, and you can see the steep slope here of this beach carrying a lot of sediment on it. And in these areas, because they're accreting, they often are lower energy and have more shoreline vegetation, like this pickleweed here. We have a little bit of sediment coming from upslope, although in this case, you can see it's somewhat blocked by the bulkhead here. There's also oh, yeah, go ahead.
The slides are following a little bit behind you, so I don't know why it's delayed, but right now we're looking at the accretion area image.
Okay, that's good to know. I am still talking about the accretion area, okay. But thank you. I'll try to pause for a moment as I advance slides. Thank you. Are you seeing the transport zone slide now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
From above.
Yes, okay. So another area we can see here is the transport zone, and so that the main thing that's happening here, sediment is moving along the beach carried by the wind and the waves. And we have a little bit of sediment coming from upslope, but that's mostly being blocked by the bulkhead. So we have these different zones here. You can see them all from an overhead shot again. So, one stretch of shoreline, there can be a lot of things going on right here. And each site is going to take specific assessment to see what's going on. So shorelines are complicated, a lot happening. They're full of life. And not just our charismatic species that I talked about earlier, but all sorts of little critters here. We have our bivalves and all sorts of aquatic invertebrates and plankton and so on, as well as our terrestrial food chain that feeds into things. So there's a lot happening here and a lot of life. Our estuaries are rich in life. And some of this messiness and complexity also supports the life. And so we like to encourage this where it makes sense and is aligned with your needs too.